Hey, and welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to discuss happiness, probably one of the most important emotions that we can experience. If you ask anybody what do they want, they'll tell you they want to have a happy life. If you say to anyone, what do you want for your kids? They would say they just want them to be happy. So what is happiness? How do we own that feeling so that we can feel it whenever we want? I saw a great line that really sums up the whole of happiness, and that is that there's no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. And what that really means is there's two ways to get happiness, one that works and one that really does not work. So let's start with the one that does not work first. And that is that there is no way to happiness, meaning that so many people are spending their lives trying to buy and attain this feeling. They're going out there and they're doing stuff, they're going out there and they're buying stuff in an attempt to create this feeling called happiness. They'll buy a new clothes, they'll buy a new car, they'll have a new experience in the hope that it will create some sense of internal happiness. But the problem is, like with anything that is dependent upon an outside factor, it becomes a sense of addiction. We become dependent on something else. And we are not free. We are enslaved to those things. And I talk about this a lot in my self-worth videos, that if your self-worth is dependent upon someone else's comments, someone else's compliments, someone else's validation, or it's dependent on some other item that's outside of yourselves, and your self-worth is enslaved to something external to yourself, and life is not going to look very pretty. And I've seen some horror stories when people put all their self-worth, their whole sense of worth, their whole being upon something external to themselves instead of owning it internally, having that rich bank of emotion. So if we're trying to get our happiness from an outside factor, we are enslaved. We are literally like drug addicts each day, waking up trying to get that feeling of happiness that doesn't stay, because as soon as that experience or that thing wears off, we're back to where we were before we bought that thing. It just does not work. It does not work. And it becomes a really difficult way of living life. You know, let's ask the question, and let's just see where we're holding. What has to happen for you to have a good day, for you to feel happy, with you to feel good about life? Are you having a bad day today? Are you having a good day today? And if you're having a good day today, what happened that made it a good day? What happened today that made you feel happy? And if you're having a bad day, well, what would have to change? What are our rules for happiness? What are our rules? You know, some people say they can't be happy if it's raining outside. They can't be happy unless they're sitting on a beach. Well, that's very clear that their happiness is dependent upon something external to themselves, and they are not free. And they're going to be living this life of constantly seeking out these things to make them happy, and that's not the way that we want to live our lives. So what are our rules? Let's think about it for a second. What has to happen for us to feel happy? And if it is an external thing, especially something like the weather and where I live, if you need to have the sunshine to be happy, you're probably going to be miserable most of the year because it rains here a lot. But let's have a think about it. Is our internal happiness dependent upon an outside factor? And if it is, what is the consequences of that? Are we in control of that thing? What happens when we can't get those external things to make us happy? And are we really willing to change it? Do we see the negative consequences of having the only ability to be happy based upon an external thing or an external someone? Someone has to say something to us to make us feel happy. There are really negative side effects to that. Most importantly, we are not emotionally free to feel what we want to feel. And freedom is probably one of the most important values that we all have. We all want to be free. But so many of us put ourselves in a prison, an emotional prison, where we can't get our emotions that we really desire unless we get a certain thing, which means we're in a prison because we can't get that thing unless that thing is there. And sometimes that thing is not there. So we put ourselves in this emotional prison. Even though most of us are physically free, emotionally, so many people have put themselves in a really small room with some really heavy-duty bars around them. And the truth is, to get out of that jail, we have to change the way that we see happiness. We have to change the way we see ourselves and our whole emotional makeup. So let's just have a think about those questions. Are we having a bad day? And if we are, what needs to change? And if we're having a good day, what's made it a good day so far? If we're feeling happy, why? Is it based upon something external? If it is, then we're in a jail. And what's the negative side consequences for that? And even if we are feeling happy today, what happens when we're not getting those things? What happens tomorrow if those things are not there to make us happy? Let's just have a quick think about that so we can just discover what's going on in our lives right now in this moment. So hopefully, through thinking through those questions, you would have discovered what your rules are. And if you are dependent upon an external source to make you happy, and hopefully you've realized the negative consequences of relying on something external to have that all-encompassing feeling of feeling happy. It just does not work. It is exhausting when we constantly have to chase something to get that feeling that we all want for ourselves and that everyone wants for their kids. Well, that is one way that we can live life. And unfortunately, too many people are actually living their lives that way. Their happiness is dependent upon something else. But there is another way. And there's always another way when it comes to our emotions. And that is to own it internally. I call it to have a rich bank of internal emotions that are not dependent upon something external. Then we can own it whenever we want. We can feel it whenever we want. And we become emotionally free. We're no longer in that prison because we decide what we want to feel. So if we go back to the original quote that I started out with, there is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. Then we have to find a way to be happy independent of what's going on outside, independent of the weather, independent as to what someone says to us or what happens to us on every given day. Whatever happens, we still have the choice to be happy. And how do we create that feeling of happiness? So happiness, we have to define it because a lot of people get mixed up between happiness and fulfillment. And I talk about this in other videos. Fulfillment is the process of moving forward and contributing. Happiness is something in the moment. It's about being present in the moment and just feeling really good about life. Instead of going to buy something externally or going to have an experience externally to make us feel happy, it's about owning it internally. And there is only one way, and it takes a lot of work, but it's an investment that's going to serve us so well going forward because we're going to be emotionally free and we can call upon that emotion whenever we want once we have that bank account of internal rich emotions. And you probably heard this, but it's so true. Happiness is created in the moment when we feel a sense of gratitude, when we feel a sense of richness within our current lives, when we feel rich about what we have. The problem is so many people are focusing on what someone else has or what they want, what they don't actually have in the moment, instead of focusing on what they do have. And when we focus on what we do have, we feel grateful. And when we feel grateful, we feel so incredibly alive. We feel so happy because we realize that we have so much. So I like to do a little exercise. There's many that I could do, but this is one of my favorite ones that I always do in my workshops whenever I talk about the concept of happiness. And I want to do it with you to really bring out how rich we are and how we can feel that richness internally so that we're emotionally free and we can call upon that emotion whenever we want. So I want to ask you a question. Your little pinky, how much would you sell it for? How much would you sell it for? I've got a buyer. I'm not in the industry. Don't call the police on me. But I know someone who's looking for a little pinky. How much would you sell your little pinky for? Think about it. When was the last time you used this pinky? I don't want to know, but when was the last time that you used your pinky? I've got someone who's willing to buy it for £100,000. Would you sell it? And whenever I ask this question, people say to me, not sure, not for 100K. So I go 500K, not sure. Sometimes people will say to me they'll be willing to sell their little pinky because they realize they don't really use it that much. I'm sure it's got a purpose, but I can't think of one right now. And they'll say maybe for £5 million, they'd be willing to sell one pinky. £5 million, you could buy a beautiful house, beautiful car, probably retire for the rest of your life, buy a house for all your kids. So for £5 million, for one pinky, they'd do it. But they go, well, you've got another pinky as well. How much would you sell this finger for? How much would you sell your thumb for? Right? If you're willing to sell this for £5 million, how much are you willing to sell your thumb for? Now, our thumb, I think we can realize we'll probably use a lot more than our little pinky. But we got fingers. And if we're willing to sell a little pinky for £5 million, just on our fingers alone, we've got a body worth millions and millions of pounds. And that's not even going to the vital organs. How much we sell a whole arm for? Whole arm. And what if a pinky's £5 million? Because that's generally been my experience of what people will be willing to sell their little pinky for. How much would we sell a whole arm? How much would we sell an ear for? Now, a lot of people would tell me, Joe, I wouldn't sell it for all the money in the world. I would not sell an ear, I would not sell an arm for all the money in the world. which means that we're walking around with something so priceless. When was the last time that we took note and we were just grateful in the moment for the incredible body that we have? A body worth, it's priceless, billions and billions of pounds. The ability to see, how much would we be willing to give that up for? The ability to hopefully walk, the ability to hopefully be able to use our hands, the ability to think, the ability to smell, or maybe not after COVID, but prior to COVID, the majority of the world could smell. The ability to hear beautiful music. How much would you give up that pleasure for? How much would that be worth? And when we think about it, we start realizing how much we have. But the problem is, like with most things, like in relationships, most people focus on what they're not getting, what they don't have, and therefore they don't feel happy. So if we want to own this internal sense of richness, we want to own that internal bank and have a really rich bank account, then we've got to start shifting our focus. Not what have I got to do to be happy? What rules do I have to have in order to be happy? What needs to happen in order for me to be happy? Because then we're enslaved. We're enslaved to an external world that we cannot control. If we really want to get the best life, then we have to start building that internal bank account of rich emotions. And one of them is happiness. We've discussed self-worth, we've discussed other emotions, but happiness is a big one. We all want to feel happy, and we can all feel happy right now. If you just stop and think about your body, what you have, think about the fact that you've hopefully got somewhere to sleep tonight. Hopefully you've got food to eat. Think about places you've been to, your ability to go to those places, experiences that you've been able to have, and realize how lucky you are. Because chances are, if you're watching this, you're probably in the top 1% of rich people in this world. If you've got running water and you've got a house, you're doing a lot better off than a lot of people out there, because some people would be dying to be in that situation, independent of our challenges. We have so much. We have so much. I remember talking to my grandparents, and they used to tell me how they used to leave their food on the windowsill every night in the hope that the food would be fresh the next morning. We just stick it in the fridge or stick it in the freezer. We have so much. We have so much that we could be grateful for. The problem is that we focus on everything we don't have. We focus on everything that isn't working well. We focus on all the things that we believe shouldn't happen. Well, should we have arms? Who says that we deserve arms? Who says that we deserve to have our legs? But we get caught up in this mindset of entitlement. You know, I remember I've had a few people say this to me. I was going through some serious challenges over the last couple of years, some really difficult challenges. And a few people came up to me and said, "Joe, you don't deserve this. You're a nice guy, you don't deserve this." And my answer back to them was, well, I appreciate your concern and I appreciate your sense of affection towards me. Who says I don't deserve it? Who says I don't deserve that as much as I deserve to have my arms? You know, in the same way that I didn't do anything to deserve my arms. I didn't do anything to deserve to have my eyesight. I didn't do anything to deserve to have the ability to be able to hear. So why do I deserve all this but don't deserve that? Who says? Who says? Who says? When we realize that we have so much for free, when we realize we have so much for free, number one, when things go wrong, we deal with it in a different way. We don't get the sense of entitlement that shouldn't be happening to me. Instead, we realize it's just part of life and we have so much already, and we deal with those challenges in a far better way. But when we walk around with a sense of entitlement that I deserve more and I need this to be happy, we're never going to be happy, because we're never going to appreciate what we truly have. And when things go wrong, it's going to knock our whole world of this should not be happening to me. So when we start owning happiness on the inside, our whole worldview changes. It really does. It shifts the whole way that you deal with life. And it shifts your complete ability to be able to decide if you can be happy right now in this moment. Right now in this moment. So what I would suggest as a little exercise is each day write down one thing that you are grateful for. One thing that you have that you've never taken notice of. It could be walking down the street and realizing, what would happen if I couldn't walk? It might be the fact that you have a car. What would happen if I didn't have a car? I'm so grateful for the fact that I can just drive wherever I want to go to instead of having to rely on public transport, which isn't the best way to get around, because you end up waiting for a bus and then one comes and you waited ages and all three come in one go. You know how it goes with public transport. So the ability to have a car is an incredible thing that we should be grateful for, right? If you're in a relationship, again, something to be so grateful for that we have, that we can experience. How many people would love to be in a relationship but aren't? If we have a job that we love and we're able to bring in an income to support ourselves and be able to go on a holiday, when was the last time that we were truly grateful for these things instead of focusing on the things that we haven't got? It's developing a whole new mindset. And in part 2, I'm going to share with you an idea to really bring this out and take it a little bit deeper as to how we get so stuck in focusing on what we don't have, and how we get stuck in focusing on all the things that we feel are unfair instead of focusing on some other things that are unfair. The fact that we have 2 arms, the fact that we have 2 legs, the fact that we have 2 eyes, hopefully. The fact that we have so many abilities to experience so much pleasure in this world. So until you watch the next video, I would suggest just one thing a day, to write down one thing a day that you are truly grateful for, to think about it and to really bring in that emotion into your body and to see what it feels like to be able to experience that sense of happiness without any rules attached, without having to do anything, without having to go have any experience, just the ability to feel happy right now in this very moment.